Call the meeting to order. We did have a full quorum except for Cheryl is allegedly supposed to come in online. We'll wait for her. Okay. If I could have the board please review the minutes submitted for the March meeting. And any additions or corrections are moved to be accepted.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting.
Thank you, Carol. I have a motion to accept. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kyle. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted, please say aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Having no old business on the agenda, we'll move to new business, which is the Unified Development Ordinance Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance.
It's a mouthful. Okay, so we were approached by DNR mid-year last year, about July, to update our flood damage prevention ordinance. It has not been updated since 2014, and they had a lot of new best practices that they wanted to see us implement. They're doing this all throughout the state. So they've been working with us, back and forth since that time, to get a new ordinance underway. So I'm kind of just going to go through some of the updates that are included in that new ordinance, and then I'll show you the map of our floodway overlay areas and special flood hazard areas, things like that. So let's see, this affects all areas within that floodway overlay, special flood hazard areas. The red line version is available to you on Teams, so you can kind of see the before and after. Really, most of this stuff was led by DNR. I'm the floodplain administrator for the town, but they kind of just walked me through what these new best practices are. By no means a hydraulic engineer or anything like that. So I just followed their lead, and there were just a few things that we had to hash out that were specific to Pendleton. So the best and most useful way that council has advised us is to incorporate it into our UDO as an appendix, kind of like what we did with the gateway overlay. So in 2014, this was a part of the town code, and we created the UDO, so it's easier to use, and there's also penalties involved with this if you don't comply, that are easier to incorporate into the UDO than as a separate chapter in our town code. If you have any questions on that, Dan can explain it a lot better than I can. So the updates include, like I said, that inclusion into the UDO. We do have a floodway overlay section at the very end of chapter 2. And we also have that gateway corridor overlay section in there as well that references Appendix D, which has all the standards of the gateway overlay. So the statement of purpose was updated. We have new definitions, removed outdated definitions. Lands to which this ordinance applies was updated to include the overlays and the special floodway hazard areas. We updated some section title changes, redefined the duties of the floodplain administrator, provision for reduction in those flood hazard incidents. So like when you're building in a floodway area, kind of new best practices to assure that buildings stay as dry as possible. We really don't get a lot of people who try to build in the floodway. There's just a lot of red tape, a lot of things like this you have to jump through. It's not impossible, but it's incredibly impractical. If you have an existing structure in the floodway, that's one thing, but building one that's entirely new, we've had some people ask, and we tell them all the things they have to do to get there, and they very quickly say, I don't want to do that. So, and then construction standards. So you go to the next slide, please, Steph. This just highlights, you can see the floodway, which is the blue striped area. The green is Pendleton. And then the blue is the floodplain 100-year. It's also called like an AE layer. There's a lot of layers that FEMA has in this map. And then the pink is kind of the fringe. It's the 500-year floodplain area. So that just shows you, we do have two kind of major creeks, or I guess rivers that you could say come through Pendleton. It's Foster's Branch and Fall Creek. And so this just represents how much of town is in those areas. And I'm not sure how often FEMA updates this map. I want to say their last update was in 2016. But I don't really know what their schedule is for this, how often they go out and reassess, or if it's just if someone calls them out or wants to do it. Things of that nature. So any questions on that ordinance?
Well, has the area, the floodway area changed then very much from how it was before?
This is the only one I have, so I'm not really sure what it's looked like before. I would imagine it's increased slightly, just because that's kind of the norm in most areas with erosion and flood events being more severe than they have been in the last 20 to 30 years. But, you know, whether that's climate change or other things or what have you, but
Interesting, all of Neighbors Complex is the floodway.
where. Oh, the grocery store?
It's in the fringe.
It's in the fringe,
Five.
yeah,
500 year.
yeah.
So we're not adopting any mapping, we're just, the ordinance just refers to whatever the FEMA mapping is,
Mhm.
right?
Whatever their current mapping system is. And then, you know, I didn't really get it out of DNR, but if this is the kind of thing that they want to see updated on a more regular basis, like every 5 to 10 years, we can certainly do that if that's their purview, but I'm not sure, like, they're kind of strategic. You know, like, for example, it's best practice to update a comprehensive plan every 5 to 7 years, which is kind of the schedule we've been on. I don't know if they kind of have that with their overarching flood ordinances to do that every 5 to 7, 10 years, you know, whatever, but this is about 10 years old at this point.
So I wonder if any of the landowners within these areas are gonna have any kind of significant change to what they can or can't do, or?
I would say not. I don't really think that we necessarily changed a huge amount of things you can do. It's just there's a lot of processes you have to go through, and some of those have been updated. But anyone who's within a floodway or even a floodplain, I believe, has to have a special type of insurance. So like someone who has a home in the floodway knows it. And they know pretty well what, you know, they're getting into, I would say. Also what insurance will and won't cover if it's damaged. And, you know, what kind of percentage, I guess, say if you have an entire structure and then 48% is damaged, if your insurance will cover that, but if it's over 51, they won't cover it and they won't, you know, can't rebuild their kind of thing, which is kind of been what we've gotten our floodway overlay. If it's damaged past a certain amount, you can't build it in the same spot. So I think it's mostly up to them, but I wouldn't say that there's significant enough changes to bar them from really doing anything that didn't already have a prohibition on it.
If you want to build on or remodel that house, that's when you get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Springs had the house down there on State and Jefferson, maybe State and
Oh, okay. Yeah.
they had to raise that up because it had to
Mhm.
be 16 inches above.
Yep.
The bottom of the joints had to be 16 inches above floodplain and they just tore down.
Yeah, well, I think that there's one there as you're heading westbound on State Street, right before you get to the manufactured home park that sits way back there. And I know they had, yeah, they had an addition or something they did back in 2013 and they had to raise it quite a bit because they're completely within the floodway.
Yeah.
And
So,
it floods.
and it does flood quite a bit.
And it floods on the other side. Everything on the south side flood too.
But really looking at potential issues, whether we approve something or not, insurance refers back to the floodplain. So we're not making unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, and truthfully, like, you know, if things change, like the floodway could decrease. I mean, if they go and reassess these mapping areas, whether, again, that's because there hasn't been as much erosion, there's not huge events, or some implements have been put in place to help with flood management. I mean, some of these could even decrease where you might not even be in a floodway.
We're basically just highlighting and making an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We don't make these rules. The insurance isn't gonna look at whatever we've adopted, they're gonna go straight to floodplains to DNR anyway, and do their own underwriting, however they come up with their numbers.
And again, like I said, we don't have a lot of development trying to occur in these areas. But this ordinance is in place to help us direct when those things do if they occur. That's all I've got. Any other questions?
We need to vote on this or?
Yeah, because this will go to town council, same as like a UDO amendment would.
Okay.
So it's gonna be a whole new section in the, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be an appendix in the back.
Oh,
We always just refer to FEMA and the DNR anyway, so.
Hmm.
We always refer to FEMA and the DNR anyway. We don't like the rules.
I mean, this is like somewhat, they worked with us to tailor it to our community, but
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the UDO, adding the flood damage.
Any
prevention.
questions?
Oh, sorry.
oh, do they have to open this up for public hearing?
Oh,
Anybody have, audience have any questions or comments, and landowners or?
The floodplain line is determined by what year? The DNR determined that year.
This just says it's the most recent one. I'm not sure how often they update the
If
map.
they go by the year, for example, I ran across the problem one time. Architect told me that the date is go by that date. Because of that date, then I'm not on the floodplain.
Yeah,
So what date are we using on this particular floodplain?
so I know
Is it
that,
1974 or 1992 or 19?
well, the way they categorize it, they just say best available floodplain hazard area map. So again, I think it was 2016 when it was done.
2016.
Yeah,
So it would be based on 2016 floodplain map.
no, it would be based on any updates that they do. So this ordinance would pertain to anything within the floodway or floodplain areas as FEMA updates their map, whether it increases or decreases that area. Because we don't control what their mapping system is, but our ordinance holds true to all of those areas.
so we don't have to have a new ordinance or a new.
No, because this is certain, I'm sure been updated, before we had the one in 2014, and we've had older ones. I mean, I've got what are those called, elevation certificates from like the 90s. So we had to have had something up to that point. And it just continues to be updated, so.
I mean, DNR's website already lists you as the floodplain administrator on their website.
Very nice. Do I get any letters?
Your emails here, if people want to email.
Is it the right one, or do they have the town.pendleton.in.us?
They do.
They do, okay, great.
Correct one?
Huh?
That's not great. It's a gov now.
It's a gov, yeah, that's good, I'll let them know.
Okay.
Now I can, now what was I gonna do?
So
Make a
you-
motion to approve, adding the flood damage prevention ordinance to our UDO.
Thank you, Carol. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kyle. All those in favor of the flood damage prevention ordinance as submitted to the UDO, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Item number 2 is Plan Commission's RDC designation of an area needing redevelopment blight resolution.
Yes, so, this is a resolution that is needing updated, per Okra, their best standard or their best practices every 10 years to readopt your, for lack of a better word, blight resolution. We call it area that needs redevelopment. This is another one from 2014. So it includes the area outlined in this map that has not changed at all since 2014. RDC has already seen this. You'll see that resolution in your Teams drive. they have opted to re-adopt that resolution. Again, nothing is changing in it, but this resolution allows us to apply for grants through Okra. So it's just a best practice for them to keep it current every 10 years. So if something were to have changed, this boundary, for example, that's why they want to keep it current every 10 years. So this has already been through RDC. It'll come through you guys, go to town council, and then back to RDC. So Kerry Craig is here. He can answer any questions. This is a resolution he's pushing through since he's our grant writer. Was there any comments from the RDC concerns on anything like that? None? Okay.
How was the area determined?
Well, this is mostly our downtown business area. I'm guessing that's why that outline was created in 2014. Because those are probably where we would consider most of the grants from Okra. Some of them are specifically for downtown areas. So from what I can tell, there might be one or two items on here that are not within our downtown business zoning. But from what I can tell from the map, all of them are. So it's just our downtown business zoning area, which before might have been called something else before we got our new UDO in 21. I don't know if the name changed for down here from the old code book. So that would be my guess of why RDC did it that way in 2014.
What does Okra stand for?
Office of
Community and Rural Affairs.
So they gave us grant money, if you'll recall, the 5 buildings down here that got redone, including this one back in 1819-ish. That was through Okra, an MSRP grant for facades. So that's one example of those things.
So would it help us to move that line over and grab the fire department?
Well, this is cutting the fair. I'm not sure if,
So there's some criteria in here that says that the buildings have to be in deteriorating conditions. So I don't know if grabbing new buildings really.
It's not for grants or whatever. They're always trying to get grant money.
And my,
They have their own grant writer.
they have their own grant writer.
I was gonna say, one of the things that Hannah Rose mentioned, so basically this area was already determined, like it's an existing area from 2014. What's happening here is while we're re-adopting this, technically this area hasn't expired. What's happening here is specifically for Okra requirements, this designation of blight, which in statutory terms is called an area needing redevelopment, can only happen through a very specific process, which is starting with the RDC, through the Plan Commission, to the council, back to the RDC. So functionally, nothing is really changing in this existing ordinance. What we're kind of doing here is saying that the conditions in 2014 have not improved to the point where this designation is no longer applicable. So it's not specific to one building or one specific improvement. It's kind of the general grouping an area where these conditions exist. And so from 2014 to now, that there could be some improvement, but not substantial enough to take it out of qualification for these grants. And so what's really happening here is not so much a change or new area. It's just for specific Okra purposes, we kind of have to hit these statutory, events to trigger this designation, if that helps at all.
Lots of red tape.
Right.
so can the area be expanded to include the State Street 38 corridor that extends and is already classified as business out to Interstate 69, as well as the 36, 38, 9, 67 strips of,
I would say
Okay.
those wouldn't count as a downtown. But, that would be
Because
my guess. That's
This,
This is
having
really
that
more-
classification, this is part,
Blighted area.
Yeah.
well, and it's also
Yeah.
part of the Main Street
Main
Yes,
Street.
rules.
yes.
it's
And
that's
so,
required by
yes.
the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development.
And that has very specific guidelines, which we met at one point
Right.
to then get that. I don't know if we're at the highest level yet. Pay attention. There's like 3 levels, your beginning,
Mhm,
your middle, which is, I believe, our classification, and then your highest level,
mhm.
Main Street USA.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And we're Main Street.
We're
Indiana?
Main Street Pendleton and then Indiana Main Street is the
Indiana Main
program that
Street.
operates through Okra as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want to change anything that could harm that status.
It's fine. Just questions. Just questions. Any other questions or comments on the existing? About the audience, any questions? Anybody online, Steph?
Cheryl's online, but there are no questions.
No questions. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept an area needed redevelopment, readoption ordinance as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the readoption ordinance as submitted.
Give a second.
Second,
Thank you, Carol. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Updates for you. Steph, if you want to hit the next slide right quick. So the Blue Star Ready Mix Concrete Plant on 700 got their approval last week. They'll be beginning site construction soon. I'm not sure when they'll pull their building permit. Oh, they're already moving dirt? Impressive. The Wawa gas station behind CVS, they submitted their plans on, let's see, second week of February. So we got back to them, their first round of comments. They're addressing those. So we'll get an updated set of plans for them probably in a couple of weeks. And then Hunsinger Commons, which is just next to those 2 condo buildings that are in Hunsinger Farm on Fairfield Lane. They've also been approved, and that's 23 new attached single-family units that'll be rented out. They have talked about the possibility of condoizing those at some point, just because that's a condo area. But for now, they'll be single-family attached rental units. And then BP Gas Station, we got a second round of comments under review for them for site updates. So we have a couple more weeks of getting together comments for them before we give those back to have them updated by BP. And then the Heritage Hub Hotel, the Fairfield Inn, located on Henderson Way, south of Starbucks. They are under their first set of review, and will also have their first set of review comments in a couple of weeks as well. So any comments, questions on those items? Okay. Our comprehensive and downtown plan, we had our last steering committee meeting on March 24th. They're moving right along. We had 401 survey responses, which was really impressive, in my opinion. And we had a great turnout to the open house. We had 56 people show up, which is really great. A lot of wonderful comments, and I think the team has captured it really well as they presented in our steering committee meeting. So, any questions on that? Okay, and then just some other updates. We are looking to get an arts and culture plan started in January. We are petitioning a firm called Designing Local. They have a really impressive portfolio, and we're very impressed with the scope of work they gave us. So we'll get under contract with them hopefully here soon, and then start that once the comp plan and downtown plan are completed. Because I think that'll give them some direction and kind of where we're gonna go with that plan.
What, just real quick, what is the
Sure.
purpose of the arts and culture plan?
Well, I think we've had a lot of feedback just in general, and also with the comprehensive and downtown plan that folks would like to see more arts and culture availability, actual art itself, things like that, and so that plan we kind of put together where that could go, what it might look like, what funding mechanisms might look like. Like, for example, something really easy that kind of anybody can do is murals on the building. It's a vinyl print that can go on any building. It can be art from whomever. And that's a way to, we have people stop out here by our mural on the side of town hall all the time. It just kind of draws people in and creates an arts and culture culture. So that's hopefully what that will accomplish, and I think they'll do a great job. US 36 reroute and a US 36 Water Street intersection study. I know that's a mouthful. But we're working with the MPO to get a consultant under contract to study a potential reroute of US 36 up to Water Street. That's something that's been identified in the town's comp plans, study plans since like 2006. We have it in our current thoroughfare plan as well. And then also they're gonna study what that would do to Water Street, what kind of remediations can be done at Water Street, maybe a light, maybe a roundabout, something like that. Because Water Street is already a pretty spicy intersection. It's really not the greatest. The other thing that will include is kind of a potential or a conceptual land use around that new 36 route, whether it's a leg of it, or, you know, it completely is the new route, and the other part is deemed a local road and NDOT vacates it. You know, there's a million ways you can do it, but they will hopefully also be incorporating some land uses into that, so we can have almost like a mini I-69 plan in just that area. So it'd be like from Water Street down to 36, of what can potentially be developed there. There's a lot of floodplain in that area. There's wetlands, there's floodway. So it's a pretty wet area. Probably not a whole lot that can happen, but this study is like a pre-step that NDOT wants us to do to see what all the red flags are, what the possibilities are, and then they'll consider throwing some money at it.
So will they consider that prior to the already approved construction? Because I personally wrote them to ask for another meeting. They had one a year ago, and when they wrote me back, they said there wasn't enough interest to have a meeting. That was one of my points that I made, that I felt like their current plan failed. And they gave me a matrix of basically everything that I listed and the rationale as to why they're not changing their mind on anything. And that intersection was one I had asked for it to be reviewed.
Is there gonna be a median wall there?
It goes up to 36,
So
but it
that-
doesn't go past 36.
So you'll still be able to do the left turn at Water Street.
It'll have, like a painted suicide lane up to Water.
I
That's the 36 to the north, like through between the car wash and.
That's the potential reroute. And this is something, like I said, that's been in our plans for a while, that might help have something be done at Water Street. Also 36 and 38 along 67 are pretty close to one another. So this is something that the MPO has kind of spearheaded for us to work with NDOT on. To your point, Jenny, I don't think there's any way that project, the ATO, which is the added travel lanes project, is gonna be modified at this point. I would agree with you that Water Street should have been taken into consideration. But at this point, it's neither here nor there. So this might help with that, especially because some of the data should be collected. We've talked with a potential consultant about once the added travel lanes project is done in about early 27, mid 27, going back and collecting those numbers again to see how it affects Water Street.
I
I'd
talked
round
about
up.
the angle, if you're at
Yeah.
Water Street, and if you want to pull out left because of that angle, you have to really pull up.
Oh, yeah.
And they told me that basically it's not an issue. Just pull up. There's plenty of space there. Well, not when someone's been pulling in and gonna take it off from a certain vehicle.
So this, and I totally agree, but I think this might be the best way for us to get something at Water Street, because this should hopefully give us a lot of really good information that then might help us work with NDOT, even if we don't necessarily reroute 36 completely, something with Water Street, it needs to be done. So. Totally agree.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Anna.
Yep, Oh, and then I have, sorry, one more thing, the residential rentals that you had asked for last month or month before. Tracy was able to get, a pretty good Excel spreadsheet. There's an updated one she got me just today that's in your Teams folder. I haven't sent it out yet. I sent you the old original one that she had given me. But this one is more updated. So it looks like there's about 240 rental units. This does not include apartment complexes or places like Ashbury Point. It's just housing style units that are rented out. 23 of those are not really within our downtown area. Most of them are within the urban fabric. So I know you guys had asked for that. And that's what Tracy has found me. So I'll send out that new one if you want to take a look.
And how many residential structures are they there as a baseline?
It's well, it's about 240 units, but it doesn't tell me if they're all within the, I don't know if there's a duplex with one address. You might be able to distinguish that, but there's 240 units. It doesn't mean it's just one building, though. There could be 2 or 3 within a single building.
I guess my question is, how many residential structures do we have in the core area that this represents?
We didn't look that up. We only looked up rental units.
I was pleased that most of them are locally owned,
Yeah.
because that was my fear, is there.
You'll see the ones out in like the Huntsingers and the Blue Spruce, and those are usually not.
But that gives me some comfort in knowing that
Yeah,
people.
yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
the very, very, very large majority are local owners. Yep. Oh, for downtown? It might be about 700 total units. We're just thinking from the lead line inventory of how many of those we had to send out to people, so probably roughly 700.
So roughly a third.
That's all I got. That's the very end.
Thank you, Anna. I like the last comments too. It kind of keeps us up to date on some of the old stuff that's been going on.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
helpful.
Because we don't see that come through for a while.
Yeah, and it's, some of these things have certainly been, on my books for over a year now, so they're moving quite slow.
I think we approved the ready mix a year ago.
Oh, I think it's been longer than that. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Board? Anybody online, Seth? Anybody online? Scott? Anybody? Meeting adjourned.